everyone, I'm Kendria. I need you to go like, follow, and subscribe Soul Productions.
What's up, everyone? And this is Next Level Thinking. What's up, everyone? This is another episode of Next Level Thinking. As you know, as always, we help you bring you to the next level and to take your life to even further levels. So, as always, your host, Chris Holmes, bringing you inspirational guests. Today, I have my special guest by the name of
James Roberts.
Awesome. So, let's hit the ground floor. Tell the audience just a little bit about yourself before we go a little bit more in depth.
Well, Chris, I am a online training, nutrition and mindset coach. So basically I look to kind of build people up from the ground up, get them to probably transition from the way that they think aesthetically towards both their training and nutrition, and get to like an inward perspective as to, well, why do you actually want to change something more specifically, and get them to delve deeper than their initial goals of, well, I think the bigger ones is obviously get a six-pack. This time of the year, as we get closer to the summer months, it will be to get into that bikini, the swimsuit, and kind of step away from that ideology and actual mindset, and look at really delving deep as to what is that emotional connection that is really kind of holding you back, and the actual real deep reason as to why you actually want to change the facets within your actual lifestyle. But also, what I alluded to was I'm a I should say retired elite athlete of just over a decade, where I competed for Great Britain in, I think, numerous amounts of world championships, and was fortunate enough to have represented the country at both the Beijing 2008 Paralympics and the London 2012 games as well.
Awesome. So, just coming after that question, I want to go a little bit more in depth about the mindset, especially about the mindset of an athlete, to compete against other competitors. But I also believe strongly that this kind of mindset also can help you in your personal life as well. You're competing to get to your dreams, your goals, your deadlines, and much more. When you hear like mindset, especially when it of an athlete mindset, what comes to mind?
If I'm honest, probably quite egotistical and very single-minded and quite selfish at times, but you can kind of see those tangibles, why they work, because you are very driven to the process and the overall outcome and actual result, because like, well, nothing's going to stand in my way of getting to, well, we'll call it, we use the term maybe like Wizard of Oz of, the red, I can't say it, on that actual path to get to Oz, because it's like, well, there's going to be distractions, external factors that are going to get in the way.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're driven enough to get to that, you are going to be that way inclined. So I think people have said to me down the years, you're quite self-centered, very single-minded in the way you think. But at that time in my life, I did actually achieve where I wanted to get to. So I think on the one hand, I probably had to learn and be a bit more compassionate and have a little bit more empathy towards, be it other family members, because they weren't living day in, day out with me as the athlete, because, well, obviously it's the aunts, uncles. They don't see me like my mother would do whereas my mum got used to that. That's my personality. That's my traits.
Right.
She's grown up around me as the athlete growing up, so I've developed those traits to go from probably somewhat of a fixed mindset where you were kind of driven just to beat your other competitors, to, I think, where the light bulb moment actually arose when I kind of switched over to having a little bit more of a growth mindset.
Okay.
I was looking at the bigger picture as well. I need to improve myself to get to where I need to be, where I want to be, and where I need to be. So I need to kind of have this shift in think and operate to be able to do that.
Definitely agree with that, and it all becomes with the mindset because your limitation or how far you can go does come to your mindset. If you think small, you're going to achieve small goals. If you think big, you will achieve big goals as well. So, tell us what got you into, let's see, in athletics. So we're going to go a little bit more into the depth and the roots. So, like, where did this all come from? Like, what was the why? What was the drive that gets you to become, as you said, an elite athlete in your past?
I think, Chris, first and foremost, I've always been very sporty inclined by people I hang out with, just being engrossed within, well, watching it. Didn't matter what sport, predominantly it would have been soccer, basketball. I think the military influence of obviously growing up on a military installation. When I was younger, I had access to, well, by the time I left the installation at 19, we had a network solely for that, and you could watch sport 24 hours a day if you wanted to. But I think being instilled in that kind of environment where fitness, nutrition to some degree, and actually the well-being is paramount, it was maybe kind of a natural progression to want to, I don't say necessarily become a career, but just the way I operated on kind of conscious level and maybe subconscious level to just be, this is, I like this as a person, so why not do it? But I think the notion of when it transpired to actually make it as a career, an elite sport, I would have been about 15 or 16 where I actually realized, well, this is quite nice. Things start to align, and this, I could make it a career. I know I did deviate from that a little bit when I entered my preteens and adolescence, where I thought, well, this notion that you had as a young child of, well, you want to be a professional athlete. Well, okay, this is not very realistic because you have a disability. But then when a coach approached me and said, had you thought about doing disability sport? And I actually took on board what they said and went and kind of actioned it. An entire new world opened up for me, and it kind of, I was asked this question last night, well, what are you actually happy for from a disability perspective? And I can be wholeheartedly say, if it wasn't for having a disability, this notion of being able to realize I won't say a lifelong dream of mine, but like a childhood dream of becoming a professional athlete, I was able to put that into actual fruition and make it a reality.
Nice. And I like how you were putting, like, it just, I feel like everybody's journey is like in its own way to mold them, because everybody's journey is going to be differently than everybody else's. And like you said, like, taking that jump into doing something like that's different, pushed you to go into a higher level of what most people are not even able to obtain in their entire lifetime. But it always goes back to the mindset. To add on a little bit extra is, how did it feel when you were standing there and you were representing your country? Like, how did that feel that you were going to be representing something so big?
I think at the time you don't think of it as, I'm not going to say not a big deal. I think if I use my first game as the example, I think even though I was selected, I was asked by teammates, well, are you not ecstatic and overjoyed that you're going to be able to go to your first games? It's like, well, no, let me be a little bit more pessimistic and say, well, this was like 100 days out from the games. Well, anything can happen between now and then. Negatively, I could get injured, I could get dropped, and not be able to go. So having that, we could call it chip on my shoulder, so to speak, and thinking of the worst case scenario, which I think, well, no case of my own, I think it's a family trait that I've learned of worrying, of, you know, thinking of what could go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it puts you into the situation of maybe a more alertness, where you're going to not take any day for granted. You're going to take every day as it's going to be your last opportunity, or you could say on earth, if you wanted to look at it from that context.
Uh-huh.
And actually strive to be the best person you can be day in, day out. I think there's maybe, if I was harsh on myself, there's probably little things here and there I could have done better on reflection, but I need to maybe be a little bit more, show myself a little bit of forgiveness in that perspective, and not be so hard on myself by that, because I can't change the outcome in that facet, or that actual what's happened in the past is in the past. I can learn from that and look to implement other things that I didn't do quite as near as perfection as I could, or implement things that were I perceived as less important, that needed to be at the forefront. Whereas I can see that now, it's obviously I could have maybe improved performance a little bit more by just doing these little simple things. I think maybe, like, to answer your question more specifically, Chris, in terms of, well, how did it make me feel?
Mm-hmm.
It does make you proud. It gives you that element of, I don't know, it makes you stand, I don't know, a little bit taller. You puff out your chest, because you're able to achieve, like you said, what's something not a lot of individuals are able to achieve. So I think, and that's maybe where I lost a bit of touch once I retired, because, okay, those things have gone into the water, back into, you know, the back of the closet, have gone packed away, and the memories, okay, most of the things that bring it back to the front of the brain is probably when memories come up in Facebook. You say, oh, that happened such and such time frame ago. But I think, other than actually having them in memories or photography, and I think this is maybe where we begrudge ourselves at times, because we look at, I think, the criticism other people are going to portray to you, because you're thinking of, well, such and such is going to take offense because I'm wearing a piece of, you could call it memorabilia, because it is in the past, that they weren't able to achieve. But you could put that down to jealousy, envy, as to, well, if they were in their shoes, in your shoes, sorry, would they do it as well? So I think that kind of mindset has shifted. It's like, well, I worked very, very hard to achieve that. So what is it for somebody else to begrudge me of wearing it? I earned it. It is mine. Okay, it's old. However, it still gives you that sense of pride that, okay, I achieved this. I wasn't just representing myself, my family. You know, you talk of, obviously, your country, but you're representing where you come from your town. So you kind of put them on the map if you're coming from a small place. I know the bigger cities or things like that don't actually need that recognition, because they're known for their prestige no matter what. So say, for example, you were born and raised in London, for the example's sake. Well, it doesn't need that publicity, because it's out there in the mainstream anyway. Whereas the likes of where I live now, I wanted to be represented in a positive light. Whereas a lot of times in the media, not just where I live, but the region as a whole, it's generally anything bad that happens is in the spotlight. So you're thinking, well, let's flip the script per se and show it in a positive light for a change. Whereas I think a lot of people liked to use where I went to university. It's like, well, the only connection I have to that part of the world is because I went there to study. That's it. There's no connection other than that. Whereas where I reside now, there's all family history that goes before it. So it's me living it up to expectation of not just myself, but trying to portray a lineage, so to speak, if that makes sense.
Yep, great answer. And then also, it seems like it all summarized down to self-awareness of knowing who and what you are and what you're capable of, your goals, destination, and much more. Because once you are more self-aware of what's all going on, then you will know completely where you should take your next step. Instead of just kind of blindly going into something and you're just like, what's next? What should I do now? Because I feel like everyone needs some kind of needs to know who they are and then be self-aware, so then they can start drawing the pathway that they should proceed to. And also, which is going to go to my next question, is the importance of having a mentor or someone of a high influence to kind of keep you on track. Because as we know in life, we're going to go through a lot of storms, we're going to learn a lot of things, but at the same time, we are always learning every day. So I want to hear in your words, the importance of having a mentor, teacher, or just someone that can really make a positive impact into your life.
I think it's a poignant question, Chris, because I think we have this illusion that we know it all. I think more specifically, probably when we're teenagers, that's probably exemplifies that exponentially. Because so what can you teach me? But then there's loads of things that you don't. Not necessarily do you need a teacher or a mentor. Just asking questions of, if you have the luxury of still having your grandparents around, would be a bonus. Because I know a lot of people are kind of swaying towards mindset coaching, like life coaches. Well, the real life coaches in the world are those older statespersons within your family. They've had life experience. I think you could say to a certain extent, so have I, because even in my short 30 odd years that I've been in existence, I've achieved quite a lot in that short space of time. But I've not lived how to word this, like an extended life where you've got your ups and downs, like would be the case with my mother and father. Well, I'm unfortunately all my grandparents have now died, but I did have those conversations growing up and ask questions. But then that maybe came down to the fact that I was a single child, so I did have adult conversations at an early age. So it was, I think my mom said to me, I'd have to explain to somebody of same age, I don't know how old I've been, probably maybe 10 years old, and have to simplify it, because I forgot who I was speaking to, and because I was around adults, you are going to talk in a more sophisticated way than, say, the likes of obviously your peers, but that's a skill in itself. I think now you're going to talk the language of the community which you're within, and that's a skill in itself. Being able to change not your identity, but how you speak and come across in that actual community,
right,
was a skill. You are acting a bit like a chameleon. You're changing your skin, so to speak, to fit in. Okay, for rightly or wrongly, it'll depend on how you're actually taking that, but you're able to empathize and actually identify with that community because you were able to speak the same, we'll call it language, but we'll call it emotive language because it's going to strike at the heart of them as the individual within that community. But I think it comes down to that. You need to reach out to somebody that has more experience than you and not take it as a hit to your ego, which I think that's very much a stumbling block towards people of resistance. And I can hold my hand up and say I was very much somebody like that. I was thinking, well, why is such and such doing better than me? And you would have that, kind of the negative
kind of thought with it.
Yeah, you'd have envy, you'd have jealousy, and you're only digging yourself a bigger hole, because you start thinking, well, what am I doing wrong? Well, I think on reflection, you talked about awareness. Well, I haven't. Well, that's probably come to the forefront because of mindfulness and obviously mindset training. I can take a step back. Well, these things have arisen because I've took my foot off the accelerator. It comes down to that. It comes down to me.
You got comfortable.
So you've got to take a sense of looking within and actually not having that victim mentality of saying, well, everybody else is to blame. Well, come on. You need to take a little bit of responsibility there and say, well, what could have you done better in these circumstances to put yourself on a better foot? So I think it's not letting your ego get too big and say, I think the good song that goes with that is "Storms is too big for your boots." I think you need to take a little bit of onus and say, well, if somebody's further up the ladder than me, okay, if they're not stuck up their own ass as well, they have no problem helping you out because they've been in your shoes. You're more likely to be willing to should I rephrase it, to pull you up than push you down. I think, and we talked about this on my show a little bit, I think maybe the nature of the two industries we operate within go against that, because you're taught from the very beginning to be having that notion of dog eat dog mentality, survival at all costs. But we don't operate like that as human beings. We are we operate in a pack mentality. But why should we actually operate like wolves, dogs? There is enough food to go around,
right,
so to speak. You don't have to operate killing one another to survive. If you're going to get more, so to speak, you're probably going to get more things going your way, and I've seen that exponentially from just changing how I've operated. Everything seems to gravitate towards you, whereas I think if you have that, you could call it a fixed mindset and be stuck in a dark cave, obviously people are going to kind of push away from that. It's like, well, I don't want any of that negativity. And I think once you become aware of between the light and the darkness metaphor, you don't necessarily want to associate yourself with that environment. You want to say, well, I don't like this, I want to push this away. So if you are enlightened, should I say, in the approach of how you operate on a daily basis, you are going to gravitate towards more positive people that are wanting to lift others up, wanted to better themselves. So it's just a natural progression. You kind of just gravitate towards it, and you won't necessarily want to, I won't say associate yourself with that kind of environment. You can kind of say, well, I don't like this. Mm-hmm. Let me deviate from it.
You good.
And in terms of, I think we touched upon it a little bit with Jay-Z's and I can't think of his name, in terms of the Defiant One documentary that was on HBO. Jay-Z talked about it a lot in terms of when things seem to go wrong, he wanted to move himself and distance himself from those environments, and he's turned out okay.
And I think that's very important too, because you hit on something very important. Of course, like everything is great that you said, but this one right here I think is really big, because I feel like a lot of times people stay too long in toxic environments hoping that it will change. And and when I say change, I mean the environment will change when the best decision is just to get out. So with that, I want you to go a little bit more in detail about that, and then of course you can continue what you were talking about with Jay Z. But I just want to put this on your mind as you answer.
I think, yeah, I do agree in terms of that, but my coach put out Facebook Live today, about an hour ago, and he talked about it from, yeah, you can get away from that situation, but then on the actual poignant thing that I was talking about, that in terms of, yeah, you can get away from a toxic environment, but are you doing it for the right reasons? Is it necessarily the environment that's toxic, or is it you as the individual? So if it's you as the individual, and I think this is what he actually meant by it, is it doesn't matter wherever you go from, the change of environment scenario, be it, I moved from here in North Wales to Texas. Well, that environment's not going to change, is it? Because I'm the one that's causing the toxicity. So I think it comes down to, on the one hand, what you talk about, if it's a toxic environment that you've not created, I would say full-heartedly, yeah, you need to get out of that environment as soon as you can. Okay, there's going to be different factors in, but you need to find a solution to be able to get out of that, because it's a never-ending cycle, because you're just going around in circles. You're kind of freewheeling, so to speak. But whereas on the other hand, if you're the toxic person, well, you need to look within yourself and say, well, what needs to change? It's being aware to the fact that, okay, I don't know, you might be quick to judge, be very much a cynic, and want to push people down because something is wrong. Well, they're not difficult solutions to change, but they're going to take time to implement. But if you're willing to put in the work, that environment can change. And I think that is a way, and I think I've been that way inclined, just the way you speak or operate around others. I think it is a notion of respect. It's how you want to be treated is how you treat others. But okay, it's the other way around. But it comes back to that. If you treat others how you want to be treated, you should get it in the same likely manner. But that's not always going to happen. But you need to take a little bit of a step back and kind of look at it from their perspective and say, well, they might be stressed, or there might be some facet of their life that's not going particularly well, and have a little bit of empathy towards it, and go that way inclined to, I don't know, in terms of taking on board, like a comment that somebody said just jokingly, and take it to heart. So you've got to take things into context first and foremost, and not be worried about your ego, because at the end of the day that can hold you back massively, or alternatively to get you to change the way you operate, because you've taken on board what somebody have foolishly said. They might not really mean it, but you've taken the actual comment out of context. So it's looking at those things from that perspective, and probably going on to what I was talking about with Jay-Z.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to think with the one that's probably the most poignant one was when Death Row was at his height. Well, he wanted it. He could kind of see that association with, gang warfare. He wanted nothing of that and created his own label. So he, even though something was successful, he saw it as, well, that was going to be a problem. It was escalating and escalating. Well, I want no part in that. Let me deviate. And that's probably pointing to what you mentioned, Chris, in terms of being a toxic environment. And he talked about that numerous times in the documentary. When it came time to that environment became too toxic, well, I want nothing to do with that. Doesn't matter how successful it is, I want out. So it would be Death Row Records. I think the other one was when NWA kind of was going through the bickering stage was the other one, and I think there was another one, but it's not vivid in the mind in terms of what it actually is. So I'll use those two. He changed and kind of found a new way of coming out with new content and actually evolving. So I think that's probably pointing towards how you need to look at things. And I've talked about growth mindset a lot. It's having that notion of adapting and evolving. It's finding a solution. Well, how do I need to adapt? It's very Darwinistic. You either adapt or you die. So that's probably as deep as you're gonna get, but nature is built around that entirely. You need to find a solution to the problem and change. I know most people don't like to hear that, but the truth hurts most of the time. You don't necessarily want to hear it because it's so close to the root cause, and it's probably a lot of people will tell you what you want. A lot of people will tell you what they think you want to hear. Well, that does me no good. That I'm not going to improve. I think a lot of people will say, well, I'm sorry I stepped on your toes. Well, if I asked for it, I don't perceive that as negative. I've asked, I have to take a chance. It hurts my ego, but we move on. You need to look at it from that perspective. Okay, on the flip side of that, if it's garbage and people are just spouting it because of whatever reason, envy, jealousy, they just got up on the wrong side of the bed. It's like, well, if you don't believe that, just throw it away. It's like, yeah, that's total crap. That's total BS. I don't believe that. It's that I don't know. You could probably laugh and joke about it and say, well, gosh, what's so wrong in your life for you to put that kind of hatred out? But I think if you look at it from a positive perspective, and you ask for that actual critique and how you can make things better, well, that's fine. It's trying to adapt, like I said, adapt and push forward. You're trying to keep your foot on that accelerator, and we'll keep it moving forward. So it's having that way of thinking and not deviating from it for anybody, really. It's if those people within your inner circle are going in the right direction, they're going to think the same way. Whereas maybe if somebody's pulling the other way, don't try and change them. Maybe educate them and try and get them to at least take on board your opinion, but obviously don't dictate to them your opinion, because you're on a hiding to nothing there, and you're going to, I won't say resent yourself, but you're going to kind of look inwards of, well, what's wrong with me in terms of it. Whereas if you actually took on board and then listened to them, it's like, well, I don't agree with them, and that keeps cycling over and over again. Okay, you having a different opinion on lots of things. Okay, is that a toxic environment? And maybe that has to go, and that could be your best friend. Okay, if it's not, how would I put this? If it is detrimental to you as the individual, well, you are the first and foremost. It's you that's have to live with that situation. So if you're not happy with it, it's got to go.
Exactly. So with all of that said, much more, because you hit on a lot of different key things that definitely people need to consider, especially when it comes to the things that you talked about, definitely in depth. And it's like coming back as this karma as well, other things as well that people need to really consider when they making this journey in life and much more. So before we close it out, do you have any last comments that you want to leave for the audience, as well as where can they find you for other future project? And I know you have your show as well, so definitely put that out there so the audience will know?
I would get your audience and anybody listening, I get you to challenge your perception of your mindset. And what I mean by that is to look at how you perceive every facet of life. Kind of take an awareness step to say, well, let me take a step back, and how can I be more adaptable and interchangeable at how I view things, and look to be more open and accepting of others' opinions and be less. And I think we've got probably too many critics in the world. Be somebody that is going to be, I can't think of the word, but looking to bring people up as opposed to push them down. If we have more of those people in the world, I think the world would be a better place.
Most definitely. And don't forget, where can they find you?
You can find me on social media at James O. Roberts 11. So that is on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can also find me on YouTube. If you type in the Mindset Game podcast, that will come up. And like you said, Chris, I also host my own show that has recently gone through, well, it's still in the rebranding phase still, because I need to change all the artwork and whatnot. But so if you typed in the Mindset Game podcast in iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts, that would come up. But that is going to shift over to the Mindset Athlete, well, in the next coming days as we're recording this. So that, look out for both of them, I would say. It's probably the easiest one to find the show.
Awesome. Well, I just want to thank you for being a guest on Next Level Thinking. As you know, we always bring you inspirational guests. He brought us a lot of different jewels and challenged our mindset to think on a lot of different things. So I hope you were definitely taking some notes and definitely thinking more in depth about everything that he hit on. It's your host, as always, Chris Holmes on Next Level Thinking, and I have my special guest by the name of
James Roberts.
And we're out. And make sure you like, subscribe, and share this podcast to your friends and family, and let's change that mindset and take it to the next level. Peace.